Welcome to Will of Fire Stories. Tonight's story isn't about a hero. It's about something that was never meant to be human. What if Naruto Uzumaki wasn't a ninja? Not a weapon, not a chosen child, but the reincarnation of the 10 Tails itself. A primordial force of destruction hiding inside a human body. If you enjoyed dark anime what-if stories, cosmic horror, and alternate timelines, make sure to like the video, subscribe to Will of Fire Stories, and turn on notifications. Because this story changes everything. This is, what if Naruto was the reincarnation of the 10 Tails? Chapter 1. The Vessel of the Void. The villagers of the Hidden Leaf called him a demon, a monster, a curse. They thought they were being metaphorical. They thought they were punishing a boy for the sins of a fox. They had no idea how wrong they were. The fourth Hokage didn't just seal a fox into a baby. Minato Namikaze realized, too late, that the 9 Tails was merely a fragment of something much older. Something that had been waiting for a human host since the dawn of time. He didn't seal a beast inside Naruto, he accidentally awakened the 10 Tails' original consciousness within the boy's DNA. Naruto Uzumaki didn't grow up wanting to be Hokage. He grew up hearing the whispers of the earth itself. He didn't feel lonely, he felt hungry. Not for food, but for the very energy of the universe. By age 6, the accidents started happening. A group of older boys tried to corner him in an alley. In a normal story, Naruto would cry. In this world, the shadows in the alley didn't just move, they unfolded. The boys weren't hit, they were erased. Their screams were silenced as the ground beneath them turned into a mouth of swirling white chakra. When the Anbu arrived, they found Naruto sitting in the center of a perfect crater, his eyes no longer blue, but a terrifying, rippling Rinne Sharingan that faded back to blue the moment he looked at them. I didn't do it, Naruto whispered, his voice sounding like 1,000 people speaking at once. The world just opened up. Third Hokage Hiruzen Sarutobi realized then that Naruto wasn't a Jinchuriki. He was a singularity. He ordered a total information blackout. Naruto was to be kept in the village, not as a citizen, but as a containment breach. But you cannot contain the apocalypse. During the Genin exams, Naruto didn't struggle with the clone jutsu. He looked at the scroll of forbidden seals and didn't just learn a move, he absorbed the ink. When he performed the multi-shadow clone jutsu against Mizuki, he didn't create 1,000 boys. He created 1,000 void wraiths, monstrosities made of pure, dark chakra that didn't use kunai. They used gravity. Mizuki didn't stand a chance. He was pulled into a localized singularity. His body compressed until he was nothing but a memory. Iruka-sensei looked at Naruto with terror, not love. Naruto stood over the remains of his teacher's enemy, A.S. Ingle white horn beginning to protrude from his forehead, quickly receding. Iruka-sensei, Naruto said, his voice cold and hollow. The fox in the basement is quiet now. Something else is awake, and it's very, very hungry. Team 7 wasn't a team, it was a containment unit. Kakashi Hatake wasn't there to teach Naruto ninjutsu, he was there as a suicide watch operative, carrying a seal that was PPOSED to kill Naruto if the beast of the void ever fully manifested. But as they headed toward the land of waves, the seal on Naruto's stomach began to crack. Not because the fox was pushing out, but because the god tree was trying to grow back. The world was about to find out that the loser of the academy wasn't a boy at all. He was the end of the world. Chapter 1 End. Chapter 2. The White Forest of Death. The Land of Waves was supposed to be a standard protection detail, but for Team 7, it became a descent into a nightmare. As they trekked through the thick mist, Kakashi's Sharingan began to bleed. It wasn't from overexertion, it was from the sheer pressure of the chakra radiating from Naruto. It was heavy, ancient, and smelled of ozone and damp earth. When Zabuza Momochi, the demon of the mist, finally struck, he didn't aim for the bridge builder. He aimed for Naruto. His instinct as a predator told him that the boy wasn't a child, he was a glitch in reality. Hidden Mist Jutsu. Zabuza's voice hissed through the fog. 8 points, 8 vital organs. I'll start with the heart of that strange brat. Zabuza swung the Kubikiribocho through the mist, a strike meant to decapitate. But the blade didn't hit flesh. It stopped an inch away from Naruto's neck, held in place by an invisible gravitational anchor. Naruto stood still, his head tilted at an unnatural angle. The mist is loud, Naruto whispered. It's full of water. Water belongs to the earth. And the earth belongs to me. Suddenly, the ground beneath the bridge didn't just shake, it liquefied. Massive, bone-white roots, hard as diamond and pulsing with red veins, erupted from the sea. They didn't grow, they materialized, tearing through Zabuza's mist and shattering the bridge. "What is this?" Zabuza screamed, leaping back as a white root nearly impaled his chest. "This isn't wood style. This is something unholy." Kakashi stared in horror. He recognized the energy. It wasn't the chaotic, burning orange of the Nine Tails. It was the sterile, terrifyingly pure white chakra of the Genesis tree. Naruto's skin began to turn pale, almost translucent. His blue eyes rippled into a lavender-gray Rinnegan. He didn't weave signs. He simply tapped the ground with his foot. Shinra Tensai. Deep forest bloom. In an instant, the land of waves vanished. For miles in every direction, the ocean was replaced by a forest of white, leafless trees. This wasn't a jutsu, it was a mass-scale terraforming. The bridge, the mist, and the mercenary army Gato had sent were all consumed by the roots, their chakra B. Aang sucked out to feed the growing forest. Haku, trapped in his mirrors, felt his ice turn to steam. The mirrors shattered, not from a punch, but because the very air Naruto breathed was now toxic to anyone with a mortal chakra system. "Stop it, Naruto," Sakura screamed, paralyzed by the killing intent. "You're hurting everyone." Naruto turned his head, his expression was blank, devoid of any human emotion. "I am not hurting them. Sakura, I am recycling them. Everything must return to the source." Zabuza, the man who feared nothing, dropped his sword. He saw the truth in Naruto's eyes. He wasn't looking at a ninja. He was looking at the Ten Tails will. Suddenly, the Nine Tails' voice roared from within the seal, but it wasn't a roar of anger, it was a whimper of fear. The fox was being squeezed, its massive power being used as a mere battery to fuel Naruto's transformation. Before Naruto could complete the terraforming of the entire coastline, Kakashi moved. He slammed the five-element suppression seal onto Naruto's back. It was a suicide move. The feedback of the Ten Tails chakra burned Kakashi's hand to the bone, but the seal held. The white forest stopped growing. The roots turned back into stone. Naruto collapsed, his eyes returning to blue, his skin returning to a healthy tan. Mission accomplished, Naruto muttered before falling unconscious. Kakashi stood over his student, his arm useless and his spirit broken. He looked at the miles of white stone trees that now dominated the horizon. The land of waves was gone. In its place was a graveyard of gods. "We have to tell the Hokage," Kakashi whispered to Sasuke, who was staring at Naruto with a mixture of envy and pure, unadulterated terror. The fox was a distraction. The real monster has finally arrived. The secret was out. The beast of the apocalypse was no longer sleeping. And the world's ninja villages were about to realize that you cannot kill the earth. Chapter 3. The Harvest of the Sannin. The land of waves was quarantined. The Leaf High Command labeled it a natural disaster, but the ripples in the fabric of reality could not be ignored. As the Chunin exams approached, the hidden leaf became a pressure cooker. Every village sent their best, but Naruto Uzumaki wasn't there to compete for a rank. He was there because the Ten Tails consciousness was hungry again, and the exams were a buffet of high-level chakra. During the second phase in the Forest of Death, the air didn't just feel heavy, it felt starved. Predators fled before Team 7 even entered their territory. Naruto walked in a trance, his fingers twitching as he felt the life force of every insect, tree, and ninja in the zone. Suddenly, the atmosphere curdled. A snake-like shadow slithered through the canopy. Orochimaru, the rogue Sannin, had arrived. He didn't want the scrolls, he wanted the Uchiha's potential. But the moment he laid eyes on Naruto, his legendary greed turned into primal instinctual dread. "That boy," Orochimaru hissed, his tongue flickering. "That isn't the fox's heat. That is the cold of the void." Orochimaru struck, moving with S-rank speed to plant the five-pronged seal on Naruto, hoping to suppress the boy's power so he could focus on Sasuke. But as his hand touched Naruto's stomach, the seal didn't form. Instead, Naruto's skin turned into a black sludge of pure yin chakra. "You shouldn't have touched the vessel," Naruto said. His voice didn't come from his mouth. It resonated from the trees around them. Naruto's back erupted, not with tails, but with 6 pale, skeletal arms made of wood and energy. They seized Orochimaru, the immortal Sannin, pinning him against a giant oak. What are you?" Orochimaru screamed, his body beginning to melt as Naruto started to reverse summon the Sannin's very soul. "I am the gardener," Naruto whispered. "And you are a weed." Naruto didn't use a jutsu. He opened his mouth, and a miniature-tailed beast bomb, pure white and the size of a marble, formed. It wasn't meant to explode, it was a singularity. It began to pull. Orochimaru's skin, his jutsu, and his very memories were being peeled away and swallowed by Naruto. Sasuke and Sakura watched in paralyzed silence. They saw the legendary Sannin, a man who could challenge Hokages, reduced to a puddle of gray essence, which Naruto simply inhaled. The curse mark Orochimaru had prepared for Sasuke simply evaporated. The snake was gone. Not killed, but consumed. Suddenly, a massive eye opened in the center of Naruto's forehead, the Rinne Sharingan. It looked up at the sky, and for a brief moment, the sun went dark. Naruto let out a silent scream that shattered every window in the hidden leaf miles away. The harvest, Naruto groaned, his body growing taller, his hair turning a shimmering silver white. It's not enough, I need more. He turned his gaze toward the center of the forest, where the other genin were hiding. In his mind, he didn't see people. He saw a chakra fruit waiting to be picked. The Chunin exams were no longer a test of skill. They had become a survival horror. The proctors, including Anko Mitarashi, rushed to the scene only to find a mile-wide circle of dust where the forest used to be. No trees, no grass, no Orochimaru, just Naruto, standing in the center of a barren wasteland, holding a single, glowing red fruit he had condensed from the Sannin's life. He took a bite. The power surge sent a shockwave that cracked the Hokage monument. Hiruzen Sarutobi, watching through his crystal ball, let the glass fall and shatter. God help us, the third Hokage whispered. The Kagaya protocol has failed. The end has begun. End of Chapter 3. Chapter 4. The Invasion of the Void. The Chunin exam finals were supposed to be a spectacle of diplomacy and war. But the air over the hidden leaf felt like the inside of a tomb. The sun was eclipsed by a permanent, swirling vortex of violet clouds. The sand ninja of the hidden sand and the remnants of the sound felt it, a gravitational pull so strong it made their bones ache. When the signal for the invasion finally blew, the feathers of the genjutsu falling from the sky, the sand's ultimate weapon, Gaara of the desert, was unleashed. The Shukaku inside him was screaming, not with its usual bloodlust, but with a frantic, desperate urge to flee. Mother is afraid, Gaara shrieked, his sand swirling into a defensive shell. There is something in the stadium, something that shouldn't exist. In the center of the arena, Naruto stood motionless. As the sand and sound ninja leapt from the shadows to slaughter the civilians. Naruto simply looked up. His eyes weren't just the Rinnegan anymore, they were a cosmic map, swirling with galaxies. Irrelevant noise, Naruto whispered. He raised his hand toward the sky. Bansho Tenin, planetary grave. Instead of pulling one person, Naruto pulled the atmosphere. Every invading ninja within a 3-mile radius was suddenly jerked toward the center of the stadium by an invisible, crushing force. They weren't just captured, they were compressed. In the blink of an eye, hundreds of elite shinobi were crushed into a single, dense sphere of iron and blood that hovered above the arena. The third Hokage, facing the reanimated first and second Hokages atop the roof, stopped. Even the legendary Hashirama Senju looked down at Naruto with a face of pure terror. Brother, Hashirama whispered to Tobirama, the chakra, it's not the 9 tails. It's the origin. The tree has returned. Gaara, completely overtaken by the 1 tails, transformed into the massive tanuki. But as the Shukaku opened its mouth to fire a wind bullet, Naruto simply walked through the air, stepping on invisible platforms of gravity. You are a fragment, Naruto said, his voice echoing like a mountain cracking. A broken piece of my old self. Return to the whole. Naruto reached out and touched the Shukaku's forehead. The massive beast didn't explode, it dissolved. The sand simply turned into white ash. The 1 tails was sucked directly into Naruto's palm, its consciousness screaming as it was integrated into the 10 tails soul. Gaara fell, his sand gone, his life force flickering like a candle in a hurricane. Naruto didn't kill him, he simply stared at him with cold, ancient eyes. You are empty now, be grateful. The invasion wasn't stopped by the Leaf Ninja. It was consumed by Naruto. The Sound Ninja fled in terror, throwing away their headbands, but the white roots erupted from the stadium floor, chasing them down like heat-seeking missiles. In the center of the chaos, the 4th Case Cage, who was actually Orochimaru's puppet, was revealed. But Naruto didn't care about the politics. He turned his gaze toward the Hokage's roof. Old man, Naruto said, his voice reaching Hiruzen Sarutobi. The era of the hidden villages is a mistake. The world was meant to be one garden. I am here to prune the dead branches. With a flick of his wrist, Naruto sent a pulse of yin-yang release that instantly deactivated the reanimation jutsu, sending the first and second Hokages back to the Pure Land. He then turned toward the village. The hidden leaf is the first branch, Naruto declared. A massive, white sprout began to grow from the center of the stadium, rapidly expanding into a colossal tree that towered over the Hokage rock. It was the god tree, and its roots were already beginning to wrap around the homes of the villagers. Naruto, stop, Sasuke yelled, his Chidori flickering in his hand, his eyes desperate. This isn't you, you're a ninja of the leaf. Naruto looked at his former teammate. A single, black rod grew from Naruto's palm, a truth-seeking orb transformed into a blade. I am not a ninja, Sasuke. I am the end of the cycle. And the cycle ends tonight. As the village screamed in the shadows of the rising tree, a group of figures in clouds-patterned cloaks watched from the distance. The Akatsuki, Pain, the leader of the group, stared at the massive white tree with his own Rinnegan, his hands trembling. The prophecy was wrong, Pain whispered. We aren't the ones to bring peace. We are just witnesses to the extinction. End of Chapter 4. Chapter 5. The Akatsuki's Despair. The hidden leaf was no longer a village, it was a cathedral of bone-white wood. The god tree had reached the clouds, its roots snaking through the streets, draining the chakra of any shinobi who dared to resist. The air was thick with a shimmering, toxic pollen that put the weak-willed into a permanent state of euphoria before their bodies were absorbed into the bark. On the outskirts of the devastation, an impossible alliance had formed. Kakashi Hatake, Might Guy, and the remaining Konoha 11 stood shoulder to shoulder with the very monsters they were supposed to hunt, the Akatsuki. Pain, the Diva Path, hovered above the treeline, his orange hair matted with ash. Beside him, Itachi Uchiha stood with his Susanoo partially flicking to life, his EY's bleeding from the strain of looking at the sun-blocking canopy. This is not the infinite Tsukuyomi I envisioned, Pain said, his voice a hollow echo. This is not peace through pain. This is erasure. My brother is in there. Itachi replied, his voice cold but urgent. And the thing that used to be Naruto Uzumaki is no longer bound by human logic. He is a planetary organism now. Deep within the heart of the tree, in a hollowed-out chamber of glowing crystals, Naruto sat on a throne of twisted roots. He was no longer a boy. His skin was the color of moonlight, his hair flowed like a river of liquid silver. And two horns curved from his forehead like a crown. Beside him, Sasuke Uchiha lay in a stasis cocoon, his Sharingan being used as a lens to map the world's chakra veins. They are coming, Naruto whispered. He didn't move his lips, the tree itself spoke for him. The insects come to sting the mountain. The attack began with a roar. Might Guy opened the seventh gate, a blue aura of sheer physical pressure carving a path through the white roots. Behind him, Pain unleashed a Shinra Tensei so powerful it leveled the inner walls of the village, clearing a line of sight to the god tree's core. Amaterasu, Itachi yelled, black flames erupting on the trunk of the tree. But the fire didn't burn. The tree simply inhaled the flames, converting the high-level jutsu into raw fuel. Naruto stepped out from the trunk. Walking on thin air, he looked at the assembled masters of the ninja world, the strongest beings alive, and felt nothing but pity. You use the energy of my ancestors to fight me, Naruto said. He raised a single finger. Truth-seeking art. Erasure. A black sphere the size of a grain of sand shot from his finger. When it hit the ground between the Akatsuki and the Leaf Ninja, it didn't explode. It created a void. Everything within 100 yards, matter, light, and jutsu, simply ceased to exist. Kisame Hoshigaki, the monster of the mist, was caught in the edge of the sphere. His Samahata shrieked before both the sword and Kisame's arm were deleted from reality. No blood, no pain, just a clean, terrifying hole in existence. It's not ninjutsu, Kakashi screamed, his Sharingan spinning wildly. He's rewriting the laws of physics in real time. Pain flew toward Naruto, launching a universal pull. Naruto didn't resist, he let himself be pulled, and as he reached the Diva Path, he touched Pain's chest with a gentle palm. Return to the source. The Rinnegan in Pain's eyes shattered. Nagato, sitting in his mechanical chair miles away, let out a scream as his life force was violently yanked through the transmission rods. The Diva Path corpse crumbled into dust. Naruto didn't just kill the puppet, he consumed the master. Itachi charged, his Susanoo's Tatsuka blade swinging for a seal. Naruto didn't dodge, he caught the ethereal blade with his bare hand. The invincible sword of sealing cracked like cheap glass under Naruto's touch. Your myths have no power over the truth, Itachi. Naruto said. With a flick of his wrist, Naruto sent a shockwave of nature energy that blew the Susanoo apart, sending Itachi crashing into the rubble. Naruto stood alone against the world, the god tree behind him beginning to glow with a dark, rhythmic pulse. The flower at the top of the tree was beginning to open. When the bloom is complete, Naruto announced, his voice reaching every ear on the planet, the dream begins. You will not be ninjas. You will not be enemies. You will be the fruit. Deep in the shadows, a hidden figure watched, Zetsu. Even he was trembling. This wasn't Kagaya's revival. This was something new, something the stars hadn't predicted. Naruto hadn't become the vessel for Kagaya, he had eaten the prophecy itself. End of Chapter 5. Chapter 6. The Final Communion. The world was dying in a beautiful, terrifying way. From the iron land to the deserts of Suna, the sky had turned a deep, bruised purple. The god tree's roots had traveled under the oceans, surfacing in every village, turning the great shinobi nations into a graveyard of white timber. The survivors, a handful of Kage, the remaining Akatsuki, and the broken Team 7, had retreated to the Frost Peaks, the highest point on the planet. Here, the air was too thin for the tree's pollen to reach, and the ground was too frozen for the roots to penetrate. We have one move left, Itachi whispered, his vision almost entirely gone. He stood before a forbidden altar, a relic from the era of the Sage of Six Paths. The Reaper Death Seal. World variant. We don't seal a soul. We seal the world's chakra back into the void. But that would mean the end of ninjutsu forever, Tsunade argued, her face aged and weary. We'd be powerless. Better powerless than harvested, Kakashi snapped, looking at the horizon. The horizon was moving. Naruto wasn't flying toward them. He was the horizon. The god tree had grown so massive that Naruto had merged his consciousness with the planet's crust. As he approached the Frost Peaks, the mountain itself began to moan. The insects have gathered on the last leaf, Naruto's voice boomed, vibrating the very atoms of the survivors' bodies. He appeared before them, floating in a sphere of black liquid. He was no longer wearing clothes, his body was covered in a shifting, organic armor of truth-seeking matter. 10 orbs circled him like a dark solar system. Might Guy, now, Kakashi yelled. Guy didn't hesitate, he bypassed the 7th gate and went straight to the 8th gate of death. His blood evaporated into a crimson steam, turning him into a red dragon of pure physical force. Night Guy, the space around Guy bent and cracked. He struck Naruto with a force that should have shattered the moon. But as the crimson foot connected with Naruto's chest, Naruto didn't move, he simply caught Guy's leg. A valiant effort from a flickering spark, Naruto said. With a soft touch, the red steam turned into white ash. Guy didn't die from the gate, he was simply reset. His life force was pulled back into Naruto's palm, leaving a cold, lifeless statue of salt behind. Guy, Kakashi's scream was lost in the wind. Itachi began the signs for the Reaper seal. But Naruto simply looked at him. The air around Itachi's hands became solid, freezing his fingers in place. You think the Reaper is your ally? Naruto asked, tilting his head. The Reaper is just another branch of my tree. I am the one who collects the debt. Naruto descended to the ground. Every step he took caused the snow to turn into flowers, then to dust. He walked toward the altar. Sasuke, finally freed from his cocoon but looking like a ghost of himself, stood in his way with his sword drawn. Naruto, stop. If you do this, there's nothing left. No dreams, no future. Just you. Naruto stopped. For a moment, his lavender eyes softened, showing a glimpse of the boy who used to eat ramen and pull pranks. That's the point, Sasuke. No more pain. No more wars for shadows. In me, everyone is eternal. In me, everyone is home. Suddenly, the top of the god tree, miles away but visible from the peak, began to bloom. A massive, blood-red flower opened, revealing an eye that matched the one on Naruto's forehead. Infinite Tsukuyomi, the final harvest. A beam of red light shot from the eye, reflecting off the moon and bathing the entire world in a crimson glow. One by one, the survivors on the mountain fell. Their eyes rippled into the Rinnegan. Their bodies began to be wrapped in white bandages of bark. Sasuke fell to his knees, his Susanoo shattering like glass. Naruto, please, Naruto walked past his best friend and touched the top of the mountain. The frost peak shattered, and a massive white root erupted, claiming the last piece of free earth. Naruto looked up at the moon. The world was silent. No more crying. No more fighting. Just the rhythmic hum of the god tree as it fed on the planet's history. The garden is complete, Naruto whispered. He sat down at the base of the tree and closed his eyes. The 10 Tails dream had finally come true. The world was one. The world was him, and for the first time in 10,000 years, the beast was finally, truly, alone. End of chapter 6. Naruto believed he was learning to control the beast inside him. But the truth is, the beast was learning humanity through him. And soon, the world will realize something terrifying. The 10 Tails was never sealed. It was reborn. If you want part 2, make sure to like this video, subscribe to Will of Fire Stories, and comment what you think Naruto truly is. A savior, or the end of everything. The next chapter will reveal what happens when the world discovers the truth. Until then, remember, fire doesn't ask for permission to burn.